Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to our presentation by Sachs Cannabis Advisors. And we're happy to kind of do our next round of both the benefits and the challenges of this emerging industry in cannabis. This is today's agenda, and we'll probably stray from this agenda like we normally do. But before I get into the agenda, just an FYI, we are monitoring any questions that you may have. So if you see on your screen, there's a place for you to put in your questions. I will be perusing those and bringing them up either during or at the end of the presentation. So this is your chance to get some information from the experts. But today's agenda is an overview of the new rules set forth by the CRC. The lovely CRC. What's happening now in the cannabis space? Things to be aware of related to real estate in the cannabis industry. How to best position yourself for a license. What to know from a compliance standpoint. Financial modeling and budgeting, and of course, tax issues. Now here's our illustrious experts. I'm just going to kind of read their names off and where they're from, but they're definitely going to share a little bit about themselves when they start talking and answering the questions. Myself, Todd Polinak, I am a partner at Sachs and also the head of cannabis. Adam Holzberg is my colleague who's right there with me with Sachs Cannabis. My friend Colby Piper is the director of cannabis real estate at Ripco Real Estate. Sheila Mintz, the one and only Sheila Mintz, is the chair of the Cannabis Law Group. Capehart and Scatchart, probably said that wrong, but you can fix it later. And
no, you said it right.
Warren, how do you say your last name?
Harris.
Okay, you said it. VP of Regulation Compliance at the Cannabis Secure. So we picked these folks because I think they have a nice blend of different areas of expertise. And I'm going to kick it off with just asking a very basic question for the group here. So what really is happening right now with the application process in New Jersey? We're talking about New Jersey. New York obviously is not there yet, but maybe Sheila, you can kind of talk a little bit about, when are these applications coming out? Because I keep on getting emails every 15 minutes.
So do I, trust me. And all of my clients are like, are the applications coming out at the next CRC meeting? All I can tell you is that the next CRC meeting, I think, is tomorrow, and they are not coming out. I anticipate, if I had a crystal ball, it would be really good, but I don't. So I anticipate that we will get the RFA by the end of the year. That's what I anticipate and hope for. Because but I always tell people that they shouldn't be waiting until the RFA gets out to start preparing for their application. They should be pretty much ready to go and have their team together and be able to work with everyone and understand who's doing what, and most importantly, get their property and their location, because that's probably the most time-consuming thing, other than actually waiting for the CRC to decide about when the applications are going to be decided. So that is the whole process with property has been a great deal of turmoil in New Jersey, and there are, a lot. I don't know, Colby, if you're going to be talking about that. I don't want to, I know you're the real estate expert, but
just real estate guy. Yep.
Yeah, just from my perspective of dealing with clients, I'm just making sure to get them to be able to locate a property, make sure it's zoned properly, make sure it's compliant. So you have to make sure it's compliant. Each town that has opted into the cannabis process has maybe enacted their own ordinance which describes where they will allow cannabis businesses and where and what type of cannabis businesses they will allow in their town and how many of them oftentimes. And so the town, the municipality approval is going to be critically important because one of the things that we learned from the regulations is not just having the support, the letter of support from the municipality, but also that the CRC is then going to go back after you apply to ask the municipality if they really, really want you to get the license or not. And so you want them to be, you know, like totally on board with you. So that's my pitch to get the property dealt with as quickly as possible. But there's a lot of obstacles that everybody's facing before we get to the RFA, I think.
So Kobe, I mean, this is your place. This is where you live. What have you been seeing with your clients, and what are you doing? Because I mean, Sheila's right. It's about finding the right property, and is that a challenge? Is that
So
just,
it's
you know,
twofold
or what?
it's twofold when it comes to finding the property. Are there properties out there? Yes. Are they zoned for cannabis? Yes. The issue is for the client who's going to identify the property, they have to be able to hold that property until New Jersey says, hey, here are the RFAs. You know, here are you ready to, we're ready to accept application. And landlords don't like to not get paid while their property is off the market. So there's a holding fee for it, which is twofold. So it's maybe threefold because it's supposed to be socially equity driven, and you're requiring these social equity partners from impact driven markets or areas to hold property when that's very, very extreme financial burden. So it's kind of hard when it comes to it. But there are only set properties that are available, which kind of makes the competition level pretty high.
Yeah, I think it depends on where the property, you know, where somebody wants to go. I think New Brunswick is the only one that I've seen that's actually issued their own application process for getting approvals in their town. But I have to think that there are going to be a lot of people wanting to go to New Brunswick. And so it's going to be very competitive. And I guess it's good for the for people in commercial property because they've been really hit hard by the pandemic, and with so many businesses either closing and or going to remote working. So that's probably good, but people do have to have the ability to invest in. I mean, if someone's going to hold a property vacant, you're going to have to pay them something. They're not just going to do it out of the goodness of their heart. So you have to pay for that. And, you know, and then it's, you know, when the RFA gets submitted, when the application gets submitted, and then however long it takes for that application to get decided, it could be 6 months.
Yeah,
You know?
and alongside with that, I mean, so let's say you have the real estate, you're spending money to hold on to it, you're lucky enough to get a license. That doesn't mean right now, all of a sudden, all the money starts rolling in. It's still just going to take time from getting a license to getting to be operational. So that's even a longer period of time of holding a property that's not really being in active use. So it's something else to keep in mind as well.
Well, so the CRC kind of let slip a little tidbit last night too, that one of the gate that you can make it into a zoned property through is through the zoning committee. So there could potentially be properties that aren't fully zoned for these usages, but you could purchase them and then start fighting the fight with the zoning committee to try and get it appropriately zoned, as long as you have the right distance from these sensitive areas, right? So there are certain scenarios where certain municipalities, it's not fully clear, or it is clear, but it's very limited in what you have available to purchase, whereas you might be able to find something else in the municipality that at least meets the state guidelines, and then you can start getting in and trying to get the municipality on board with your location.
So
That
question.
hurdle, that
Go ahead.
hurdle of getting a variance here in New Jersey for a change of land use is one of the biggest hurdles ever. And it's the most political thing you could possibly see in New Jersey ever, is to get that variance change. So it's hard to tell a client, let's put a property under contract and go for a variance change, which is very hard. But a lot of the properties need variance changes because of the use, simple, from agricultural to industrial when it comes to cultivation in the cannabis space in New Jersey. You can't do it on farmland because you have to construct the building. So if the building takes up X amount of feet on your farmland, you need to change the zoning from agricultural to industrial. And that's very hard to do because everyone is somewhat green friendly here in the Garden State.
Well, and we've also got this issue with the municipalities charging for these verification forms, right? So this was something they mentioned briefly in the meeting. And so are any of us worried that sort of this is going to lead to legal repercussions, people attempting to sue? How long could this potentially hold up the RFA process if it's a situation where, like you said, Colby, social equity applicants don't have the means to get into the industry according to the letter of the law, and then from there, there's just really no access, right, for property and to actually get in?
Yeah, I mean, some of the municipalities that I've looked at have had really extraordinarily high fees for not just for the applications, but then the renewal fees and things like that. I mean, I think they're not conducive to a small minority business is just that doesn't have multi-state operators throwing a lot of money at it. So it's just, it really is not, and it could. I mean, well, when clients ask me, could they sue me? And my response is always, anybody can sue anybody for anything. So I would anticipate that there would be some litigation about that, because it really does seem, massively unfair to charge. I mean, I've seen $25,000 as a license fee in some municipality or two, and I mean that's a lot of money for people that are just starting out in business.
True.
On
So
top of the state licensing fee, which is nominal, maybe be $100 to $1,000, but once you gain the license is when the fee jumps to an extreme amount of money, or maybe $100,000 if you wanted to do cultivation. And where are they going to find $100,000 laying around that they can just throw in the wind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be very difficult to try to do cultivation without having significant funding, just because of the wind up to actually producing a product. I mean, I have to think you have to be pretty well funded. It's not something that you can, you have to have the wherewithal to be able to build out, to take an old warehouse or something and build that out into something where you can actually grow cannabis. And that's not an inexpensive endeavor. I wouldn't think. I mean, I can't imagine that it is. So it seems to me that there are going to be fewer minority owned businesses in the cultivation area. I mean, I'm just looking at what it actually physically costs to build out and to create something where you can do hydroponic growth and set up the wastewater disposal and everything that that the municipalities and that the commission require. It's a very, 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 expensive proposition. But it may be that people will get, you can do conditional licenses. So maybe that people can get, if you're doing a micro business in cultivation, if you get the license, then you may be able to attract investors who will then help you seed literally your product. But it's hard to do that without I think it's hard to start cultivation without having some actual funding.
Micro business is, oh, Colby, you can go.
For a quick rule of thumb, so anyone that is out there listening, these cultivation clients, they look to spend $250 to $300 per square foot to build out their location before they put a seed in the ground, which
Mhm.
is basically the running price across the country and building out the cultivation centers. So for very simple math, if you have 50,000 square feet, it's almost about an $8 million build out
Right.
cost just before you put a seed in the ground.
And I would just piggyback on what Colby was saying with the supply chain disarray right now from COVID. We're seeing steel, technology, equipment, everything you would need for these facilities. It's all starting to skyrocket. And we're seeing a lot of these applicants starting to go ahead and try to get their vendors locked in and on the line to get their price secure before any further inflation runs off.
So I was just going to say regarding micro business, I mean, the whole point is that to allow people with less capital funding to really get a foot in the door into the industry. The downside of that on the cultivation side is while you have a lot smaller space that you need to purchase and use, you're only limited to 10 employees. So in cultivation, where it's labor intensive, 10 employees could be a major hurdle and a handicap to really be successful. So
It is difficult on the cultivation side, but I think a positive thing about the cultivation and the micro business is that you're exempted from applicants for micro cultivators are exempt from that 37 number of ceiling of cultivation licenses. So, and you can expand it later. So, I mean, if somebody's really into the idea of doing cultivation and they don't have a huge amount of money to put into it, we start out with 2,500, feet, and then expand as you grow and as you merge with, you may merge, you may do other, attract other investors or something like that. It's not necessarily a bad option.
I have a question actually. The 2,500 square feet rule, does that only apply to the retail sector of the Class 5 license? Because 2,500 square feet for cultivation, that's no more than 8 plants, 6 plants. So you're not growing anything at
Not
that
going to
point.
make any money, I don't think.
So
Not
for
too
the,
much.
for the
You know what?
micro-business-
Maybe that might be only for the retail. I'm thinking, if for some reason the 10,000 square feet is sticking in my head for cultivation, there's a restriction on space, clearly.
Right. Same with
Yeah.
mine. I think it's the 10,000 for cultivation and the 2,500 for retail.
Mhm.
At 10,000 square feet, you're kind of just brushing the surface of being able to supply.
Yeah.
you need to look at micro business as a foot in the door type of application. You're using that to launch yourself to the standard license. So it's not really a long term item. You should look at more of the short term to get to the standards.
So basically the limit for micro business cultivation is 2,500 square feet of canopy. And so they know that so basically the idea is if you were to go about building greenhouses, right? They don't want you growing any further outside of that 2,500 square foot greenhouse. But of course, your facility is going to need harvesting space, trim rooms, drying, packaging. All of that can be ancillary and additional to the cultivation space. It's really just the distributors, the wholesalers, the retailers, and the processors in the micro business realm that are stuck in only a 2,500 square foot building. And I could see that being an issue for the processors and the manufacturers at some point, because it won't be long before commercial kitchens start to open up and we start to see edible sales in maybe 18 to 24 months. And then you're going to have manufacturers sitting there going, well, shoot, I'm stuck in this 2,500 square foot building and I need another, 10,000 square foot of manufacturing space so I can start cooking.
Well, at that point, after 12 months of, operations, you could convert to the standards. You could always expand and then move into the edible space if that's, the case.
Which is
Yeah,
what
and
I've been recommending.
I think we also need to, I just got a correction from my, my fantastic associate is on the call, Lana, Hans Cohen, and she just sent me a text and said the 2,500 square feet is for all licensees. So it's not just for, it includes cultivation. However, it doesn't include the areas for drying and curing the plants. It's just the growing area. So it could actually be outside. I mean, you can have more square footage, but just the canopy where the growing part is only only supposed to be 2,500 square feet.
Who came up with
Well, and I
all
would point out that there's a 24-foot height limit too, right? So the idea is that if you had a greenhouse, you could potentially grow straight up to the ceiling, or if you were working indoor, there is, some vertical farming potential there to increase production. But I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, Colby. You get that production doubled up. How do you manage all of that with 10 people as a micro business? That's going to be a really big harvest.
So, guys,
then you can't have, what are you gonna do? Get the automatic, gonna go get the industrial trimming machine that takes up half of the room? It's like an industrial, it's like an MRI machine.
And
Throw
costs $50,000 starting, right? So
Right.
yeah, you're talking about another $100,000 investment for labor saving techniques to try and manage a facility of this size. You basically in your application have to prove to the CRC that you know how this facility is going to run and how you're going to be able to handle it. And they don't want to see that you're biting off more than you can chew.
Yep, good point. So just a question for you folks, just to change the topic slightly. How is the New Jersey application, or what we presume the New Jersey application, going to be? How is it different from the other states that have been issuing applications in the past? Is there any difference? Do we expect it to be very different? Because that's one question that we do get.
I'm not really familiar with other states too much. Pennsylvania, I'm familiar with Pennsylvania to some extent, but New Jersey is not dissimilar. With this particular round, I think is going to focus a lot more on on New Jersey resident, minority, impact zones, that type of thing, a little bit more than the previous rounds did. But in New Jersey, but I mean, I do talk to a lot of people who do, have done cannabis in other places, and I know that, California or Colorado or Oregon, any of the Western states are, their licensing process is completely different than ours is so much more complicated, I think, than a lot of the other states. Pennsylvania is complicated. I'm sure New York will be complicated also, but the other states are, are just like, I can't believe you guys have to do this. I was like, yeah, oh, we do. Welcome to my world,
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. I was just going to say, from what I've seen in other states, New Jersey has a lot more operating procedures in their licensing process. Like I said earlier, it's very much about demonstrating to the CRC that you know how this business is going to run, and they're not awarding licenses to people that, are going to become the dog that caught the hubcap, right? I know that they have savvy operators, and it is a lot different from California or Hawaii, where I've done some application writing. Those were much more general, state how you're going to meet the letter of the law and be compliance. But it didn't really tell much about the day-to-day and the actual specifics and ins and outs about the license application itself and the operation of business.
Yeah, I think it's tricky with the regulations, the CRC regulations that just came out at the end of August, because when you're talking about they're talking about you have to be able to outline your experience in the cannabis industry, or your familiarity with certain types of very regulated environments. And realistically, in New Jersey, we have such a small industry that it's very, very difficult for someone to have someone who is in fact a New Jersey resident and actually lives in New Jersey and is not just coming in from Colorado to hook up with a New Jersey entity, but really lives in New Jersey. It's very difficult to be able to prove that because it's been such a small program up until now. So I mean, I think the thing that helps to some extent is to have a lot of experience in other very regulated environments, very regulated types of professions that require a lot of compliance. So I know that a number of the applicants that I'm working on have physicians as partners, who are obviously medicine is probably the most regulated profession in the United States. And it's very, so they're familiar with OSHA, they're familiar with, different sterile procedures and all of those types of things. So I think that having that familiarity that's outside of cannabis, when it almost feels like a catch-22 to some extent in New Jersey, because, they're asking for something that it makes it very, very difficult for people to have.
Well, there is that one workaround. So the CRC did include the conditional license, which one of the aspects of it is that you don't need to have that prior experience. The conditional license doesn't ask on the application, what's your prior cannabis experience from an operational standpoint. So for those who don't have that background, that is the path forward and want into the space, going around the conditional license. It won't ask you anything regarding your prior cannabis experience, and it gets you around those kind of questions to kind of get the license.
Well, and that conditional license is interesting, Adam, because it's given priority over other license types, and yet you still have to demonstrate that 2-year hold on the property. So it comes right back to that property and zoning issue that we were having with limited supply. How does somebody with limited experience in the industry who's trying to identify these spaces actually get in there, secure the place, get the letter from the landlord, and then start working through the municipality? It's still pretty tricky at this point.
Yeah, it's not easy by any means.
Do you think, I personally think the conditional license is almost not worth applying for. It's almost like a CYA for the state to say, hey, we're opening it to everyone. You can get a conditional license, but here are the guidelines that you have to have in order to get the license. And you're going to say like, oh, I'm going to apply with a conditional, but I don't check the main 5 boxes, but I check the rest of them. The first 3 I don't check, but all 10 of the rest of them I check. I think the state's just going to be like, that's an automatic no. I think it's more of a CYA for the state's aspect to have it open for everyone, more like everyone can apply. But then again, those are the ones that are going to get the automatic no's. I feel
right. No, I think you're right, Colby. I really do.
You're right, Colby. I think
I
you're
have
right.
not recommended anyone to get a conditional license yet. So there you go.
Me either. I haven't worked with any clients that said they wanted to apply for a conditional license.
Anything conditional is suspect. So Colby, I want to throw a question out at you because I know we spoke about this. So there's a big focus on social equity and on minorities. How are minorities going to get capital? I mean, how are they going to get it? I mean, it seems to me like it's capital intensive, right?
It's very capital intensive. It doesn't make sense. It's like, where is the African American, say specifically African American community, going to get the money from? There's not too many African Americans with extreme amount of capital, hundreds of millions of dollars, to just throw out into a business. As you see in the space now, there's very few the African Americans that are in it. They're backed by celebrities. You know, you have to have like Notorious B.I.G. said, you had a wicked jump shot, or were you slanging crack rock in order to get the money. So, you know, if you're not in the NBA, or if you're not in the NFL, like, where are we getting the money from? We can't call Uncle Jamal doesn't have $100 million, or you know, Uncle Jesse isn't the owner of this company that can do this, or is friends with this, or you know, we're not members of the golf club that we can go to and say, hey guys, I'm looking to do this. Do anyone want to invest money? Because at the end of the day, the cannabis industry, you're getting private money. It's private money. So you're not going to the bank and saying, here, this is what I want to do. You're going to a hedge fund or someone private. And at that point, it goes back to the social equity. You're getting your money from someone that's not having anything to do with social equity, but yet you're basically the face of it, that you own it. So therefore, is it really social equity or no?
I love controversy. Thank you, Kobe. That's good.
Well, and the CRC hasn't put forth their head of social equity, right? So there's supposed to be a person that is leading this division that helps with business loans. That, you know, they spoke a little bit about the registering of minority-owned businesses last night. They addressed how do you do that if you don't have a tax record previously. I thought that was very helpful, and they encouraged people to go ahead and start applying for those minority-owned business certifications. But aside from that, it just isn't clear where the funding's going to come from and what assistance the CRC is willing to provide for our minority applicants when they've put such a heavy weight on this in the actual state law, and we want to follow through on this.
I think the state should come up with some type of grant or some type of program that the social equity applicants can use and not have to go and find the money from somewhere else. If they can keep the money within the state, then wouldn't that be better for the state overall, rather than, you know, then we're going to get the money from out of the state, most likely. So if we could find some type of way, or grants, program, loans, something to help them, I think that would be more beneficial for the state as an overall, in the cannabis space.
Yeah, if there was something along the line of like an SBA loan, you know, that would be helpful. But it would have to be at the state level at this point, since we have that little problem of cannabis being illegal at the federal level. So I mean, that's one of the issues with, just a teeny problem.
It's a small problem.
Yeah, but that's one of the problems with getting funding, is that all of the banks are federally regulated, or most of them, you know, and some of them are venturing into cannabis, but you know, they're people dipping their pinky toe into the water basically, but not, you know, nobody's really jumping in. So
there's really only a handful of banks, I think, only really operating in New Jersey at the moment. And looking at other states, the interest rates they charge are crazy.
A lot.
So
usually, I think it's the word.
You get financing, but you're going to be paying so much for it, where it's not worth it.
What do you guys see the rates are for money for cannabis? 12%, like hard money, 16%?
Like that, yeah. I mean, like real money, really high interest rates. Yeah. I mean, even for, I'm just thinking, even for, I have a couple of practices that I represent that register patients for medical marijuana, medical practices, and they don't sell cannabis in there, but because there's something on their website about registering patients for, you know, as integrative, you know, wellness type of thing, their own bank accounts for the practice are very high. You know, it's very difficult for them to get things, and they keep getting kicked out of bank relationships and things. So it's you know, it's very tricky right now. until there's some federal regulation, and then, and then that'll make things easier. But right now, it's all very tricky.
Well, and the CRC dropped that hint last night that there's a bank in North Jersey and a bank in South Jersey. Those are pretty much the two credit unions that applicants are going to want to seek out to work with in order to keep their cannabis accounts open and not get shut down every time, an invoice with the word cannabis in it pops up.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, I just want to kind of cover some of the questions that are coming up. For the folks who tuned in a little bit late, I think we did go through the agenda in the beginning. We are not giving stock picks on cannabis companies. I think we were talking about, that was one of the questions. You can, I mean, anyone here want to speak about that? You can purchase stocks that are companies that actually invest in cannabis or do cannabis, but this is not, a webinar to talk about that. This is more for the folks who are looking to start a business or support a business in cannabis, New Jersey. It also kind of parlays into other states that it's legal, but the regs haven't come out yet. Forgive us for using acronyms. That seems to always be a problem whenever we're on a webinar. So Sheila, what does CRC stand for?
Cannabis Regulatory Commission.
There you go. An RFP is a request for proposal, or I think we're talking about the request for applications. So if you're new to the space, you just jumped on, I think that it's great that you're listening in. Those of you who are also listening in because you really want to see if this is something that you should get into, we love having you. Question, will a transportation license require to have a space in order to qualify for the license, since one will not be storing cannabis? I don't know the answer to that one.
I believe so, because I'm thinking of one of the town ordinances I read where they were talking about allowing delivery. You're talking about the delivery businesses, right? That delivery business that they were allowing them to have locations. So I anticipate, yes.
Okay.
That there would be a requirement for that.
Basically, all applications need a location, right?
That's what I think.
Yeah.
So
they have to come check to make sure you're securing your stuff and doing all the things by the actual state regs that are written for securing the product and everything of the sort. If not, you're just a typical guy selling weed out of his house.
Yeah.
Well, and for instance, you can't leave any product in a vehicle overnight, right? So what happens, if you have a vehicle that breaks down, you have to tow it back to your facility, and the deliveries didn't get made for that day. I think you would need some sort of secure storage and some sort of security plan to demonstrate that you have contingencies in place for your transport business.
I know that someone typed in that hiring an architect or engineer to start the design process based upon the program is something that we should be including in our list of our team members. I suppose that's a good point. And they agree that the variance is a costly issue. So you have to be careful, whenever you're planning something, how much it's really going to cost you. If you're not going to get the variance, I think you're in a deep problem.
Yeah, and really, even as, independent of the cost of a variance, it takes a really long time. It can take a really long time, and it's generally a very political fraught process. So it's not something that I would recommend for somebody who wants to get something done quickly anywhere in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Unless you're married to the mayor or something.
Oh boy. One question that I do get often, this is more opinion than anything else, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, is do we suspect that the election that's going to take place in, I guess, a couple of weeks will have any impact whatsoever upon what's happening in New Jersey or New York, I guess, in moving forward on the applications or what will ultimately happen with cannabis? And that's a pretty loaded question, but I figured I'd ask it anyway.
Isn't that why we don't have the applications now? It's an election year.
Oh, that may be the case.
It's always good to have support from the top brass. The executives at the state level can do a lot to move these things forward. And there's a lot that you can do to educate them and the regulators to make them more amenable to these sorts of businesses and things. When they're focused on polling and getting their votes right now, it might not be the time to press that sort of issue. So it will affect the landscape, and I would say wait until after the election and see who's in office and then start writing emails and making phone calls.
Warren, in your experience from a compliance perspective, what are like the top issues that you're consulting your clients on compliance when they're going for the applications?
Yeah, I mean, it's really everything, right? So waste disposal, integrated pest management, sanitation, even harvesting procedures and seed to sale tracking. It's very comprehensive, and basically you need to sit down with the state legal code, plan out what your business plan is, and then go through everything that you're going to need for whatever your business model is. So earlier, right, I mentioned the potential pitfalls of running a distributor or a delivery service. Well, one of the state legal codes is you can't leave any product in a vehicle overnight under any circumstances. So from a compliance perspective, what is your fail-safe plan to store that stuff? What are you going to do if a vehicle breaks down? How are you going to make sure that you're always meeting the letter of the law based upon what your business model is? So I would say it depends on what the business is, but the biggest compliance issues would probably be getting to testing, making sure you're meeting testing standards and not having failed crops, because at a cultivation level, that is make or break for your business. And then, of course, on the manufacturing side, it's probably going to be your safety, your Class 1 Division 1 extraction rooms, the quality of your equipment, whether it's been ASME certified, just all of these things to make the regulators comfortable that you're not going to blow anyone up and you're not going to put out product that's going to make somebody sick or have heavy metals in the vape cartridge, for instance. So really, I'd say testing, sanitation, waste disposal, and just seed to sale, and then just going through the nuts and bolts of what the state wants. It's a big ask, and I would say a state business license is actually a document telling how you're going to comply, right? It's your first compliance document.
So I would think it's very time consuming to put together. Would that be correct?
Yes, it is time consuming. And what I would say is, this is what I was kind of addressing earlier, is it's difficult for New Jersey when many of these people haven't been operating within a legal cannabis industry yet to sort of demonstrate this breadth of knowledge and actually know, all of the compliance software, scales, label printers, all of these little things that you need. And then how to implement it in a way that's going to meet the letter of the law.
Mhm.
So we see this big, we believe there's going to be a big demand, at least we believe there's going to be a big demand for this industry in New Jersey, New York, et cetera. Otherwise, why would people be interested in this? But at the same time, we see all these obstacles. What will it take to kind of bring it through the obstacles? I mean, is there any, as we're speaking to people, we're on the webinar now, is there any good news? Is there anything we could tell them that would be helpful? Because there does seem to be some true issues. Give me some sunshine, guys. That's what I'm saying.
So the applicants I'm seeing that are really well connected with their municipality, that have been lobbying and pushing for their business for the beginning, that already have their location established and pretty much know how they're going to get through, they have the best shot, because like the CRC said last night, the municipalities are the final gate holders. They can make all recommendations to the state for who is even going to get licensed. So the good news is, if you have a strong relationship with your municipality, you have a very strong application initially going into the process.
Yeah, I agree. The critical piece of the application is the property and the level of support you have from the municipality. If you don't have that, it's just not going to happen realistically.
Right. And Kobe, when you're seeing folks they're using your services, give me a little bit of an understanding who those folks are. Are they really folks who are residents of New Jersey? Are there really folks coming from out of state and kind of trying to connect with New Jersey residents? Or if you can't tell me, that's fine. I'm just curious as to who's trying to get in.
Besides the national, we'll call them nationals, because real estate we call our tenants nationals that are all over. So besides the national cannabis operators that I've worked with, the smaller ones, you have mostly companies coming that are trying to connect with people here in New Jersey looking to get in the cannabis space. And they're picking up people that are residents here in New Jersey and basically using them to go ahead and apply for the license. Which isn't a bad way to go if you're here in New Jersey looking to get in the cannabis space. Then you have a proven model that Warren has been talking about to speak on. So I've seen it that way, and then there are a few state residents. There's a bunch of state residents that are looking to apply as well. So it's basically, everyone's trying to get their hands in it. It's just who's the right hands that are trying to get into the pot.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you have a partner coming in from out of state who has the relevant cannabis experience, then that's helpful to be able to provide that. There's just, so you have, not necessarily like a huge multi-state operator to come in and act as a manager or provide back office, but to really partner with the New Jersey resident, it's not a bad combination. There's a lot of different types of things going on, and I've seen a variety of things like that, but I think it's certainly not a bad way to go.
There's just one, I guess, complication. If your intent to go for a micro business license, you have the New Jersey residency requirement. So now, say partner would put complication with that.
Well, I mean, you would have to have a New Jersey resident. Obviously, you'd have to have, I think, well, I mean, everybody that I'm working with is actively involved in the business. They're going to be part of the business. They're not interested in just being, someone's figurehead, basically. So there may be other applicants that are involved, but you can't really make an application without having a New Jersey resident. You have to have one.
Yeah.
So it's good to be from New Jersey. Is that what you're saying? All these years I've been part of New Jersey.
It can be. Like anything, there's pros and cons, right?
So one other question that comes up, which I know is maybe more anecdotal, but I'd love to see if you can answer this one for me. And I know it's not really on the agenda, but since we're all here, maybe you can demystify this. There seems to be these folks who are selling cannabis. They're selling them all over. I mean, one of my colleagues said that her town has opted out of cannabis, but every night there's someone who puts up a table with a flashing, sign saying cannabis here, buy it. How is there a loophole that I'm missing, or the folks who say come in and buy this lighter for $5, and with it we'll get, you know, quarter of an ounce of you know, GMO or, you know, bubble gum, you know, strand cannabis. I mean, what's going on there? And I've heard it in different webinars. You know, I won't quote who these people are, but it seems like they're pretty bold. I mean, can you explain that to me? I mean, it's anecdotal. Forgive me, guys, in a webinar if I'm bringing up something that you said I don't want to really hear about that. But to me, it's interesting. What's going on here? Has anyone heard about
Yeah,
this?
I actually had a huge fight with somebody on the phone over a guy who's running one of those gift purchase, you know, businesses where you spend, you know, you buy a t-shirt, let's say for $100. And when you buy a t-shirt for $100, he gives you you know, a certain amount of cannabis. You know, and so he was trying to explain to me that that it was completely legal. And I was trying to explain to him that it was completely illegal because even though he said he's selling cannabis and giving the, you know, or he's selling the t-shirt and giving the cannabis, you can, the law says that you can give some cannabis, all right? But you can't possess more than 1 ounce of cannabis, you know, in your house, on your person, or anything like that. So I said to him, well, if you're giving multiple people, and you have a website and you're doing all of these things, if you have multiple people that you're giving cannabis to, then do you have more than 1 ounce? And he goes, well, you know, so that's, of course, the answer to that is yes. He has way more than 1 ounce because what do? Go out and like get 1 ounce and then bring it back and then divide it up? I mean, that doesn't make any sense from a business perspective. So, and you know, it was right after I had this this discussion with him, which ended up with him telling me I don't know anything about the law, and hanging up on me, which the Attorney General of New Jersey issued a cease and desist order to all of these different businesses right after that, saying this is not legal, you shouldn't be doing it, stop it right now. So I don't know whether there have been any arrests made, but that's not a legal endeavor. So I mean, people do stuff and don't get caught all the time, but that doesn't mean if you do get caught, you won't be very unhappy about it.
So this is a natural ebb and flow we see in each one of these legal markets, right? So as soon as California went recreational, the black market came back gangbusters overnight. It got really, really strong immediately. Now here we are about 2 years later, and what we're seeing is that they've actually over licensed in California to the point where the price per pound is plummeting and a bunch of small operators are about to fall out of the industry. So this is sort of the back and forth that you see with regulation. As we make it regulated, there are going to be black market operators that are basically craft boutique cannabis producers. And you know what? The quality is probably going to be better than what's on the legal market, at least initially, until the legal market gets up and running. So it's one of those things where we're doing our very best to get as many people to make legal purchases as possible. But I think right now in the US, where it may be 40% of all cannabis sold is actually sold through legal venues. So that's just a sign that the regulations aren't up to the standard of where the industry is at yet. And we can't possibly undercut these black market operators yet until the regulations start to reflect what the industry needs in order to be competitive.
Well, I think, you know, I think in New Jersey also that there has to be more of a supply. I mean, right now we've had so few cultivators that the cost of legal weed is prohibitive. You know, and so someone can, you know, get their medical card or buy it from the guy down the street, and you know, and not have to worry. But if once you get, I think once there's enough of a supply that you build up where it's not completely cost prohibitive to buy legal weed, then it makes more sense.
Yeah, supply is definitely a major issue for the price. I mean, right now, the medicinal dispensaries really can't service the current people with medical cards in New Jersey. I mean, also with price, you have the different taxes that are levied on the product, which also drives the price up. For the recreational market here in New Jersey, you're going to have the sales tax, you're going to have potentially a local transfer tax of up to 2%. There's going to be a social equity excise fee on the cultivation. That all drives the price up, and people may look to the black market instead of paying a higher fee for legal cannabis. And I just have to add one more thing, just talking about before, you may see THC out there that's being sold in stores, but it's likely to be either Delta 8 THC or Delta 10 THC. Technically right now that is legal. It's only Delta 9, that's the illegal product. So potentially you see someone selling what looks like cannabis, it probably is one of these other byproducts.
Good point, Adam.
I call it cannabis light.
It's like Bud Light, right, Kobe?
Like Bud Light.
Exactly.
Like Bud Light. So we have just a few more minutes left before we have to wrap this up. Just a few things. This webinar is being recorded. It will be sent to you if you actually signed up. It's going to be sent to all you panelists so you can distribute it. But I wanted to just thank you all panelists for being available. I know that it seems to me like there's a common theme of making sure you have your property and identifying your property and all the different challenges with that. On the bottom of everybody's picture there, you'll see the different email addresses that will also be sent out. So you're all okay if folks contact you, Kobe, Sheila,
Sure.
Warren, on questions. That's good. Adam, I know you for sure want to get some questions. And if you can just go to the next couple of slides. So this is the slide that basically says that if you want to download, we do have a budget and forecasting guide for cannabis business. If you click on that, you can download it. We are, next slide, we are available to help you. Just wanted to thank you all. And I think the last slide actually gives a little bit more information, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, that just gives us our address. So we're happy to hear from you. We're doing these webinars every few weeks, knowing that there's different topics coming up. If you have missed them, they are posted on our website. So if you said, man, I didn't hear about this, I didn't hear about that, that's because we only have an hour and I'm trying to change up the topics a little bit. So go to our website and you'll see them posted. I think the platform is actually YouTube, so it's pretty easy to pass it along. And any last statements, Adam, Kobe, Sheila, Warren, you got 30 seconds apiece. No pressure, Adam.
No, just, thank you everyone for, taking the time to listen in. Hopefully we gave you, information that you're looking for, and feel free to reach out with any remaining questions you may have.
Recap what Todd was saying, get your property, figure out what your business plan and scale of production is, and then get in touch with somebody who actually really knows how these businesses run so that you can demonstrate that to the CRC, and that'll give you your best chance for an application.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and get your team together. So make sure that you have your attorney, your accountant, your property person, your regulatory compliance person. These things are all critically important to be putting together the best possible. Put your best foot forward. Everybody wants to have an edge. Everybody wants to get an application, but it's very competitive, and we don't know who else is applying. So you need to do the very best you can to submit the best possible application.
Kobe, any final remarks before we sign off?
The Green Rush is alive and well here in New Jersey. Ripco's alive and well, ready for business. So if you need to get your properties, give me a call. We'll get out on the road and find some good ones. We'll identify them. I'll map them for you, let you know what's are acceptable and what zones aren't. And we're able to go. We're ready to go now. Now it's now or never.
Now or never. And if anyone's going to the MJ BizCon conference in Vegas next week, I know Kobe, you'll be there. I think Sheila, you said that your associate will be there. I'll be there.
Alana will be there.
Let's meet up. You know where to reach me. So looking forward to seeing you all again in a couple of weeks. If anything, any news breaking things happen, we'll have a webinar sooner or an e-blast, but we're just following what's going on and hope you guys have a great day. It's a beautiful Thursday, so enjoy the beautiful weather and kind of signing off from Saks. Take care, guys.
Enjoy.
Thanks.